Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is the Old Man in a Digital World. I'm happy to be with you. I wanted to take some time to talk about Myth of Empires. You may have seen that I've been playing this for a little while. I've played just under 50 hours of the game, and it's kind of interesting. It's a good game, but it's not a great game. And I do want to do a little bit of a review here to talk to you about my experience with the game, what I think about it. And it's about, I think, $34 right now on Steam, maybe on a discount because of the holidays. And so, is it worth playing? Is this a game that you want to get into? And the easy answer is maybe. Depends. It depends on what kind of player you are and what do you expect out of your games. Now, just to be right up front, let's understand. Myth of Empires is a survival MMO. Essentially, it's more of a survival game in the line of Conan and some other recent games where you're in an MMO. You're in a world where there's lots of other players that can be playing, but you're also sort of trying to survive on your own. The game has PvE, or player versus environment, servers, and it also has player versus player servers. Obviously, PvP, you can go out, raid other people, take their stuff. It's full PvP. PvE, you really can't do that. But I'll get to that part in a second because that's kind of a factor. Now, you may recall, or you may have noticed that if you've seen it on Steam, that after about 40 hours of gameplay, I did make a review. And I did say that I enjoyed the game. I did, in fact, say that, it's early access, it's worth playing, and it's worth the money. And let me restate again, this is an early access game. So it is being improved as we speak. There are many errors, and I will give great credit to the developers. They have been making, as you can see, a lot of announcements. They have been paying attention to players. They have been trying to fix a lot of stuff. Since it first came out in late November, we have been seeing them do a lot of work on this game. So I don't want to say it's not a good game because of early access. It's being worked on, and it's a very playable game as is. It's not a perfect game. It's not a perfect it's far from a perfect MMO, and it's a decent survival game as survival games go. In fact, it's a very beautiful game. It's one of the things I really like about it is it looks great. There are some things that I don't like about the game, but let me go through what I do like. So there's a lot of servers, and the developers, based on interest in the game, have created a lot more servers. That's good. The developers have been on top of making sure they're up to date, including a recent emergency fix to prevent anyone from abusing the system to be able to access players' information. That's a big thing. That's great, especially since this is a Chinese company. I'll get to that. The gameplay is pretty smooth. There's not a lot of lag. Even though most of the servers are overseas or in either in Southeast Asia or they're found in Europe, there were no American or US-based servers when I first got the game and started playing it. But yet the lag was very little. You'd see it sometimes in gameplay, but not really substantial, and it never really caused me to die or to lose anything. That's a good thing. Responsive, that's a good thing. Pretty responsive in terms of what I'm trying to do and seeing it play out in the game. That's pretty good too. Some issues with the horses and how they move, the responsiveness there. If you have a cart, you can run into problems. You can lose your cart easily. A lot of the bridges they make, you can't take a cart across. But that's, again, a minor problem, not the biggest issue with the game. It plays pretty well, and once you get up until about level 35, the gameplay for a solo player, pretty decent. It's once you start getting into the upper levels, once you get past level 20, there is a noticeable progression where as you level up, you're not able to do all the things that the level would say you should be able to do. And that's one of the problems with the game. Because as nice as it is, as good as the gameplay is, the environment is a little bit sparse. I mean, there's not a whole lot of interaction between the animals that you may run right past at any point, and they'll just ignore you unless you actually hit them, and then you have to fight. But they'll generally ignore you. There's not a lot of interaction with the environment with you, even on a PvE server. But when you do that, when you're going around and you're playing the game, you're noticing that you're behind all the things you should be able to do. You can't build everything because you need a lot of supplies. And that's something that crept up on me, and something I didn't notice until right about level 35. I stopped and I noticed, you can't keep up. If you start putting up gates around your base, if you're developing your base and you're trying to you've got to do planting, and then you've got to do all of the different workbenches you have to maintain and keep your base up to date because you have to refresh it, you have to repair everything. The repairs alone can take an entire day for one player by themselves. And that's when I started to notice, especially when it comes to the gates and on the decay rates that are there. And this is assuming that you're not playing on a private server, but you're playing on a public server with everyone around you. Well, that's when you run into the problem. See, this could be a very good individual solo game for solo players. And you can have your servers available so that you can invite your friends in to join you. But when you're not, this isn't the Valheim experience, which is more individualized. This is something completely different. And once you start building your base, once you've got your main bench, your architect, your weapons bench, your carpenter's bench, you've got a mill for grinding, you've got your farms and farming equipment, you've got a rabbit pen, a fox pen, you've got a boar's pen, a deer pen. That's just a lot of stuff. And now the game does give you NPCs, player characters that you can go out and hire them or capture them, and you can use them to do some of the work for you. But they can't do everything. They can't repair everything. They can't go out and take care of everything that you might need taken care of. You need more players. And that ultimately is one of the things and the reason why I stopped playing the game, one of the reasons why I stopped playing after 48 hours. It's too much that needs to be repaired and maintained just for me to play the game. I mean, at one point, you have to go out there and go and do full-on supply runs just to get enough supplies to keep everything repaired. And then in a couple of days, you'll have to go out and do it again. It really detracts from the gameplay, and it requires you to have a guild. The game is built around the idea that you're not playing by yourself. You're going to be playing with a bunch of other people, either your friends or individuals in the community that just decide to join you for whatever reason. And as you advance in the game, you become more and more dependent on having a guild. Single player playing the game without a guild, yes, you have a diminishing return. The higher you get, the more things that you can build, which requires more and more equipment and more stuff to work on, the less and less fun you're going to have because you're going to be behind the 8 ball constantly, and you won't really be able to do everything you want to do because you're going to be so busy just trying to keep what you already have. That's the experience that I had. You may have a different experience. The game may change. It is early access. They may fix that or change the way the NPCs work or slow down the decay rate. But on the main servers, the main world servers, that's one of the big problems with the game. The sound is decent. The music tracks are okay, and I don't have any real problem. I mean, the game provides everything. You've got your fishing, you've got your farming, you've got your taming of horses, which is kind of neat. They have a nice approach on all of that. And that's all good. And these are the positives about the game. And I'm kind of mixing the positives with the negatives because you can't really take away one from the other. The positives of the game are positive until you get to a high enough level that they're no longer positive. And that's one of the problems. And so let's talk about some of the cons. What are some of the problems with the game? Well, one of the problems that I think is pretty big is that you need a guild. This really isn't a single player game. And you really need to be aware of that when you go into this. You're going to need a guild. You're going to need some friends to really play this to the best that you can. In fact, when I look at other people who are doing guides and hints and tips, I notice the same thing. They have a guild behind them. So they're showing you how to do things, and they're absolutely right, except they have a guild which is helping to maintain everything they're doing, which is why they have these big, huge bases, and they're able to get everything done. Because without it, you really can't keep up. Or you need to be on a private server so that you can alter the decay rate so that you're not constantly having to do nothing but fix the game. Repair everything in there. There's also another thing that happened, and another thing that I want to mention, and this is a bias of my own, and I want you to know, I want to be very clear about that, because I also have a bias with the creators of the game. Now, as I said, the developers have been doing a good job. Their name is the Angela Game. That's the name of the developers. Angela Game. Or Game, excuse me. And Angela Game, they have another game that they're working on called Iron Conflict. Should be interesting to see. The thing about them is there's not much that you can see. They can tell you they've been around since 2019. They have a team that they say has been around for over a decade, which is great. And they do seem like they know what they're doing when it comes to Steam and PC gaming. It's a decent enough game. Not too terrible. Maps, charts, it's pretty detailed. It's actually pretty solid. Again, I can't really say much about that. They only have 2 games behind them. Iron Conflict, which they're doing right now. It's in early access. It's in beta testing. Hasn't come to early access yet. And Myth of Empires. But they are a Chinese company. They are based in China. And that is something that, for me personally, I'm not very enthused about any game that is Chinese, that is part of the Chinese Communist Party, as every business in China ultimately is. So that's a negative for me. You may disagree. That may not be a factor for you. You may not care about it. I don't like China having my personal private information or access to my computer. I don't like that anything that helps the Communist Party of China. That's a negative for me. And if I had known that before I bought the game, and I probably could have if I really wanted to, but if I had known that before I bought the game, I wouldn't have bought it. Just to be honest and fair. Because that is a problem for me. That being said, the other thing I had is I had a bad experience as well. Right about the same 48-hour level where I had players on a PvE server coming in and barging around through all of my stuff. Now, that may be a lack of etiquette. It may be they may not be able to take anything on a PvE server because anything that's in a lockbox, anything that's yours, they can't take. Maybe, then again, people use exploits on a regular basis. Not to say that they couldn't or they weren't trying to. It made me feel off. It threw me off of the game. And that's a problem with the player base, not with the game creation. So I want to be fair there. There's a lot you can do in the game. I only had 6 out of 94 of the accomplishments. I've only gotten to 48, maybe 50 hours. I can tell you, did I get my money's worth out of this game? Yeah. I got more hours into this game than I paid for it. I like to look at a game. If I look at the game and I pay for it, I want to have at least 1 hour of gameplay for every dollar that I spend. That means I have at least earned what I paid for. It gave me enough entertainment. Did Myth of Empires give me that entertainment? Yes, it did. And would I have had more fun maybe on a private server? Probably. Would it have been better for me if I was playing with a guild, a bunch of my buddies? Yes, probably, absolutely. I'd probably still be playing the game. Would it be more interesting to me if this game was not a China-based company? Absolutely. Is it in a perfect form? No. The game is still being developed, and it may wind up being a really great game. They have a couple of flaws, nothing that is absolutely devastating. Like I said, changing the interactions with some of the animals and the environment with the player could be very helpful. Changing some of the charts so that they're a little more descriptive. Having a guide, which a manual has come out now, wasn't there when I first started playing the game, that tries to explain certain things to you a little better. Absolutely. Having more of a balance. I mean, trying to keep rabbits alive in the rabbit pen seems it's bloody well near impossible. There are a couple of tricks to that that'll help you make it better, but if you didn't watch a guide or you haven't seen someone play, you wouldn't know it. So they have some balancing issues they have to work on. They have some environment issues they need to work on. Maybe a little bit different in music to change up the pace every so often. And definitely to work on the decay rates on the game, on everything that you build, so that it's a little friendlier for someone who's playing solo. So overall, do I like Myth of Empires? More often than not, yes. Is this a game I will play again in the future? Maybe. Maybe, maybe not. I'll probably look at it again once it becomes public. Once the final version of the game comes out, I'll probably play it again and look it over and see what they've changed. Is it worth the money? If you got a guild, got a bunch of friends that want to play with you, and in particular if you're playing on a private server, yeah. If you don't mind the fact that it's a Chinese communist country development. So as long as that doesn't bother you, absolutely, it's worth it. Otherwise, no, this isn't the game for you. Icarus is a great game. Valheim, great game. This one, it's all right. Well, that's what I think about the game. Love to hear what you think about the game. Tell me what your thoughts are. And if you agree that it's more guild-based than it is solo player-based, you tell me. I'll talk to you soon.